Hi class, how are you today? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, our learning target today is to be able to solve multi-step equations. These will be very similar to the equations we were dealing with before, but all of them will have more than 2 steps to them. So first we're going to start off with what are the steps to solve multi-step equations? Step 1 is to do the distributive property. So anywhere you have a number in front of a set of parentheses, remember you have to multiply that number by every term inside the parentheses. So do that everywhere you see the distributive property in the equation. The next step is to combine like terms. So you look at each side of the equal sign, and if there are any numbers with the same variable in front or any numbers by themselves, you add those together. So if you have 2x and 3x both on the same side of the equals, add those together. If you have 5 and -2 on the same side of the equals, combine those. So 5 minus 2 is 3. And remember, you can only combine the variables that are exactly the same together, so you can only combine x's together, and you can only combine numbers together, so you can't combine a number and x. So if you have 5x plus 3, those can't combine and they have to stay apart like that. Step 3 is to undo division of the entire expression. So we dealt with those in the 2-step problems, and you won't see them as much in the multi-step equations, but you might. So in the 2-step problems, we had x plus 3 divided by 7 on one side of the equals, and to undo that we had to multiply the whole thing by 7 on both sides of the equals sign. So that's what it's talking about there. If you have the entire expression being divided by a number, you undo that part by multiplying. Step 4 is to bring your variables to the same side of the equal sign, and you'll do that by addition or subtraction. So if you have a positive number you want to bring over, you would subtract it, and if you have a negative number you want to bring over, you would add it to both sides of the equal sign. Step 5 is to bring the constants to the other side of the equal sign, and again you'll do that by addition or subtraction as well. And if you don't know constants, constants are numbers that are by themselves. 7, 23, -5. They're numbers without variables. So those you would bring to the other side of the equal sign than the variables are. After you get through the first 5 steps, that should bring you down to a 2-step equation that we've been working on the last few classes. So then you just do the steps for a 2-step equation. The first being undo the addition or subtraction that's happening. So if you've got x plus 2, you subtract 2. If you have x minus 3, you add 2, and always to both sides of the equal sign. And then the final step is to undo the multiplication or division that's happening. So if you had 2x, that's 2 times x, you divide both sides by 2. Or if you had x over 3, that's x divided by 3. So you do the opposite and multiply both sides by 3. So every time you do a multi-step equation problem, you should follow these steps. Notice that you probably won't have any equations that use all 7 of these steps, but you should go through them anyway to make sure that it doesn't happen in the problem. So if you go to step 1 and it says distributive property, but there's no parentheses anywhere in the problem, you can skip that step. So make sure you know which steps you have to skip. Alright, so let's show an example of using these steps. So first, we have this problem here. There's a lot going on. This is probably the biggest kind of problem that you're going to see. But it involves most of the steps, so we can do them all out. So let's start with the first step. So let's go back to the steps, and we see that step 1 is the distributive property. So remember, the distributive property is when you have a number in front of parentheses. And with that number, we have to multiply everything on the outside of the parentheses times everything inside of the parentheses. So we start out by writing the 20 that stays there, plus, and then we take the sits there, and we want to multiply it by x and by -2. So sits times x is sits x, and sits times, that's a -2, so that becomes -12. And then we have to do that for the next set of parentheses. Notice that there's a negative there. That negative still has to be distributed. So the negative goes with the x and with the 3. So we get -x and -3. And then we rewrite the rest of the problem. Equals 4x plus 12. So that's the first step, distributive property. Step 2 is to combine like terms. So remember, we need to look at both sides of the equal sign, and on each side we need to figure out what terms are alike. So first we look at every term that has an x with it, and we'll put a little box around it. And that's on the left side. And on the right side, we also have one right here. And then we look at every number that's by itself. We call them constants. So every number that's by itself, I'll put a blue circle around, making sure to keep the negatives in there as well. The box should be in the -x to show that that's a -x, so the negative goes with it. Also with the, on the other side, we have the 12 by itself. And now we combine like terms. So we look on the left side of the equal sign, and the boxes, we have sits x minus x. So remember, we say if there's no number in front of x, there's a 1. So it's like saying sits x minus 1x. And sits minus 1 is 5, so we'll have 5x. Then with the numbers on the left side, we have 20 minus 12 minus 3. So 20 minus 12 is 8, and 8 minus 3 is 5. So we're going to have a positive, so it's plus 5. And then the equal sign, notice on the right side we just have 4x and 12. Those are not like terms, so those cannot be combined, so they just get written out regularly. 4x plus 12. So we have now combined like terms. Next we have undo division of entire expression. Well, you'll notice here there's no division going on. So that step we can skip. There's nothing happening there, so we can just skip that step. So 5x plus 5 equals 4x plus 12 stays exactly the way it was. Step 4 is to bring variables to the same side. So notice that we have here a 5x on the left side of the equal sign and a 4x on the right side of the equal sign. We need those on the same side. So what you do is look at the smaller one, that'll be 4x, and you want to undo the addition or subtraction that's happening there. So it's a positive 4x, so you subtract 4x from both sides of the equation. So you also subtract 4x from the 5x because, again, like terms. So 4x minus 5x is 1x, or just x. Remember that the 4x and the minus 4x cancel out here, so then we just write everything else we have. We have the plus 5 equals, and since the 4x canceled here, we are just left with 12. Now notice that the x's are just on the left side, and there's actually only one of them now. So x is on the left side, and so we have successfully brought the variables to the same side of the equation. Step 5 is to bring the constants to the other side. So that means the numbers we have here, 5 and 12, those we have to put together. So we undo the addition or subtraction that's happening to the variable. So here, it's just like a one-step equation. We have x plus 5 equals 12. So the plus 5, we want to do the opposite and subtract 5 from both sides of the equal sign. So then that leaves us with x. The 5's cancel here. So then we have equals, and 12 minus 5 is 7. And then you notice here we have x equals 7. Well, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a variable equals a number. So we have x equals 7. We're done. We don't have to even do any more steps. That is our answer. Congratulations! We're done. Okay, not quite. We actually do have a couple more things to go over. But we're done this problem at least. So as long as you follow all the steps and just go through them, you should be set on every multi-step equation that you do. And after a while, you will not have to use the steps and just know what to do. But I highly suggest for quite a while, follow the steps every time, and that will bring you through everything you need to do in a multi-step equation. Last thing I'm going to talk about today is a special case. This won't happen very often, but it may happen. So, it's like a normal equation, so let's just do the equation normally as if we thought it was a regular equation. So like I told you to do before, we go back to our steps and do them one by one. So the first step is the distributive property. So we have an 8 here in front of parentheses. So we take the 8 and multiply it by 3x and by 10. So 8 times 3x is 24x, and 8 times 10 is 80. Notice there's not any more distributive property, no more parentheses in the rest of the equation, so just write out the rest of the equation the way it was. Equals 28x minus 14 minus 4x. Step 2, remember, is to combine like terms. So first, get your like terms together. On the left side, we have an x, so the 24x is in a box. Nothing else on the left side. And on the right side, we have, for x's, 28x and minus 4x. And then with the constants, the numbers, those I'll put in blue circles. So we have an 80 and a minus 14. So then we combine the terms on each side. So on the left side, we only have one red box, just 24x by itself. So that we don't do anything with. We just leave it by itself. So 24x. Same thing with the 80 here. The number by itself stays by itself. So plus 80. And then equals, on the right side of the equals sign, we have 28x, but we also have minus 4x, so we need to combine those. So 28x minus 4x is 24x, and then we have a minus 14 by itself, so we leave it by itself and say minus 14. Next, step 3, undo division of the entire expression. Once again, is there any division? Nope. So we can skip that step. And I'll just rewrite it all. 24x plus 80 equals 24x minus 14. Step 4, remember, is to bring the variables to the same side. So notice there's a 24x on both sides of the equation. So we need to bring one of those to the other side. So again, we undo the addition or subtraction that's happening here. So we just need to take this 24x and subtract it to both sides of the equation. So minus 24x, and remember, we put it under the other x on the other side. So minus 24x. On the left side, we have 24x minus 24x. Well, that's 0, so those cancel out. And on the left side, that leaves 80 equals, then on the right side, we have 24x minus 24x. Well, again, that's 0. So those cancel out too. And then we're left with just minus 14. So minus 14, or negative 14. So now you see here, we have 80 equals negative 14. Where'd our x's go? Well, they both disappeared. That's why this is a special case. This is an equation where the x's just combine to get rid of themselves. So now the one question that we're going to ask ourselves is 80 equals negative 14. Is that true? No, of course 80 doesn't equal negative 14. 80 only equals 80. So 80 doesn't equal negative 14. That's not true. So our answer is going to be no solution. This has been a very long video, so I'm not going to talk about if you get a number equal to itself, like 80 equals 80. I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. Alright, so our final answer here in this special case is no solution. Like I said, it's not going to happen a lot, and it only happens if you end up with just a number equal to another number that's not itself. What this means is there is no number whatsoever that you could plug in for x that would make it true, that would make the equation true. So that's why we say there is no solution. Alright, so that's everything in this lesson today. Make sure, don't forget, take notes on this. That is your homework assignment. Take notes, bring it back next class. I will go over it. Make sure that you have your notes so I can give you credit for doing the homework. And if you have all your notes for this entire lesson, you will get 100. Yay! Just don't forget. And bring it back next class, and I will see you next class. Have a good night.